Okay, we're about to do a pre-flight inspection on November 88 Echo. That begins with a quick cabin inspection. So we're looking for an airworthiness certificate, aircraft registration, an operating manual, and a weight and balance sheet. And that is your aero check. Control lock, we already removed it. Verify that switches are off. Avionics master is off. Go ahead and put the master switch on. And verify fuel quantity, which looks like it is low. So we'll go put some gas in it. Wing flaps, we'll leave them up. No need to put load on the motor if we don't need to. Rotating beacon, switch on. And it is operating. Tough to see in the daylight, but it's good. So switch the beacon back off, and then master switch is off. So that's powering down. Next we'll go take a look at the baggage door as the checklist indicates, which is locked. That's okay, we have a key. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. There we go. Okay, so we need a ladder, and that'll help us verify fuel quantity, as well as a fuel dipstick and the drain to take a fuel sample and make sure nothing in the wing tanks that we don't want in the wing tanks. Okay, so beginning with an empennage inspection, just kind of looking at the overall outside of the plane. Making sure, no dents, dings, damage that we wouldn't expect, and that everything is secure. I actually really like to run my hand over everything to verify. So you want to check the bottom side as well as the top side of these. And then grab the horizontal stab by the tip and give it a little wiggle. Make sure you don't feel any play. The flight controls, we're looking in the cockpit and making sure that the yoke is moving like we'd expect it to. Inspecting every hinge point. You want to make sure that those bolts are there and securely fastened. And then on the empennage, I'm always looking for a cotter pin on the flight control cable that goes to the yoke for obvious reasons. And you look at the bottom side as well, and the cable, make sure it's not frayed in any fashion. While we're back here, we will remove the tie down. Wouldn't be good to forget to do that and try to taxi away, so that is a checklist item. So the tie down is removed. We'll continue with inspecting the control surfaces. Take a look at the rudder. You don't want to move this too much because it's linked to the nose wheel steering. So again, checking the hinge points and just signs of obvious damage. Now, the right side of this is a little different in the sense that it has a trim tab. And so on the trim tab, you want to make sure there's not an excessive amount at play and inspect the piano hinge line. Underneath is the control rod for the trim tab. Again, make sure it has the pin to secure the castle nut. Same with the bottom side flight control cable of the elevator. I'm not sure if you can see it. This looks good. Again, check for free play. Leading edges, really important to look at leading edges of any flight control surface. That's where you would see any dings and damage. So at this point, I think pretty happy that the empennage inspection is good. It's only 3 steps on this, and I covered a lot more than that, but it's really, you should put your eyes on everything and anything before, and it's your determination to make sure the airplane's actually safe to fly. Okay, so we'll begin with we'll continue with the right wing. It says to check the aileron first. I'm going to check the flaps. I like to work from the inside out. I think it makes a much more sequential flow, which helps me not miss anything as well. So with this, you just want to make sure there's really no play in the flap at this point. We can look underneath it, take a look at the hinges. Again, while we're here, like I said, inside to outside, take the fuel sample. Okay, now we're looking for water, sediment, any type of contamination, and this should be blue. The easiest way to do that during the day, hold it up to something that has a white background. Give it a quick sniff. Smells like gasoline, not kerosene, which would be a bad thing. Again, while we're here, look at the main gear. It looks like it has plenty of tread. We'd be looking for signs of brake fluid leaking. The strut, really just look for any signs of buckling that could indicate there was a hard landing on this airplane. And I think everything looks good here, so we'll continue out. Okay, so now the aileron, which has a bit of water in it because it rained. You can check the hinge from the bottom side, and then the flight control linkage, you actually just give it a little wiggle, make sure there's a bit of free play, side to side play that is, and then I like to look at both sides again. It's a flight control surface, kind of important. Alright, just a wingtip inspection, give it a little wiggle. I like to make sure everything is secure, and it feels like it is, and look for obvious signs of damage. We'll also go ahead and remove the wing tie down as the checklist indicates. There's a couple extra knots, which is not a bad idea. It gets windy out here, and definitely don't want anything to happen to the plane. Okay, so the wing strut, just look, visually inspect and make sure again it has no signs of buckling, just like we did on the main. Next thing, we have to dip the tank, so I need to go get the ladder from the other side of the airplane. Okay, now what we do, climb up on here, and it's nice to get a good view of the top of the wing too. It was cold last night, so frost would be something I'd be looking for at this point. Doesn't appear to be any. Alright, here we carefully place a dipstick into the tank, put your finger over the top, lift it out, and it looks like we have about 5 gallons in this wing, which is in alignment with what we saw in the cockpit on the gauge. This takes 19 gallons per wing side, so we will actually put some fuel in it. Sometimes the gauges in the cockpit aren't quite that accurate, so it's always important to dip the tank. Okay, so that concludes the right wing inspection. Let's do the nose next. The nose, we will be looking in the engine cowl. Again, any obvious signs of anything leaking, I don't see anything. It has a fuel strainer, and that just clears out the fuel that's about to go in the engine, so yep, it worked. You would definitely want to see fuel coming out of that. These oil caps can be a bit tight. Important not to wrench them down too tight. What we're looking for is more than 6 quarts on the engine oil level, and it is cold, so we do have more than 6, getting to the lower limit, but it's still good. Just greater than 6, that's the only thing we need to verify. Let's take a look in here, one last good check. Go ahead and close that back up. Move my ladder, and let's remove the wheel chock while we're over here. One thing I like to do, this is on a slight slope, so I don't want to remove both of them. I don't want the plane to roll away. I doubt the parking brake's engaged, and that wouldn't be a good thing, especially if you're not paying attention while doing the pre-flight check. Okay, so we checked the engine oil level, we did the fuel strainer check. Now let's take a look at the prop and the spinner, and again, just gently, not with any amount of force, I just make sure that the spinner is secure, and then I run my finger along the prop tip and really just feeling for any major nicks, dings, and it feels okay. I like to feel the belt for the alternator as well. Kind of important. It provides us electricity when we're in flight and powers some of our primary flight instruments that we depend on to make a safe flight. The nose strut, we're making sure we can see the oleo exposed, and actually it looks like they just replaced the nose wheel, so that's a good thing because that was definitely looking a bit wore out the last time I flew. Okay, so the last thing is the static source, and this is what the airspeed indicator and altimeter and vertical speed indicator depend on as a static source when they're comparing what happens at the pitot static tube right here. So air in, this is the comparison point for the airspeed indicator primarily, and it lets it know, that difference is what shows up on the airspeed indicator. Okay, so we're starting the left wing. I already removed the pitot static cover, and I'm going to place it in the baggage compartment. And again, working inside out. Since we're at the front of this, leading edge inspection, this is a vent for cabin air. I'm sorry, for the fuel tank. This is the cabin air inlet. Here is, again, the strut that we're looking for buckling on pitot static tube. It's right here. You just want to make sure it's clear, and since we did have some precipitation, sometimes a bit of water gets in those, and that can cause the instruments to fail. So something we'll verify later after we get this pre-flight inspection done. And again, removing the tie down, which is, somebody did a really nice job on this, which means it takes just a bit longer to undo on my end. Okay, let's get this removed, and it is. And we'll do the same thing on this side. We'll dip the tank, and then we're actually done with the ladder. Morning. Hi.
Are you Tim?
I'm not Tim, actually.
Matt?
Nope, I'm not Matt either. I'm just a student at their flight school, going to take this thing out for a spin this morning.
Okay, Matt hadn't been around that you know of?
No, he hasn't. He's usually out on the weekends. I haven't seen him during the week, though, and I know Tim's out of town for a while.
Yeah, I know Tim. He's sailing down in Mexico.
Yep. Tough life, huh? No.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and dip this tank. And 5 gallons again, which is consistent with what we saw in the cockpit. So that's what we'd expect. These caps need to be secure, especially since we had a bit of precipitation. If they're not, they could let water into the tanks, which wouldn't be good. This is a fuel vent. If this is clogged, since this is a gravity fed fuel system, it would be the same effect as when we put the finger on top of the dipstick to get that fuel to come out of the tank. Well, since it's gravity fed, if that's clogged, it could actually prevent fuel from going into the engine. And an engine without fuel, well, hey, that's not going to run very well, is it? So really important, actually. It's tucked away back there, but it's important to make sure it's venting correctly. So with leading edge inspection, this wing looks good. Check the wingtip lights, wingtip, and the aileron. Push it up. Give that a little bit of a wiggle. And it looks good. Again, the flap, we'll check for security. Feels secure, and just kind of take a look at the bottom side again and all of the attach points. And then, important again, make sure we do a fuel sample. And just because the right side was good doesn't mean the left side will be good. Okay, if we did see water in this, we'd see a bubble at the bottom. It looks bluish to me. It smells like gasoline. And so that concludes the left wing inspection, and actually concludes the pre-flight. So we'll go ahead and put everything away. The last thing I like to do with this close that. I'll go ahead and lock that as well. Now we can remove this truck, put it right behind. The last thing I like to do is come out in front of the plane. Now, the reason for this is if you did forget a tie down, if it was sitting at a funny angle, if something didn't look quite right, this is the best way to tell. And it's just kind of that last before you hop in the plane. Well, it has 3 wheels, it has a propeller, it has a couple of wings, you know, it looks good. So I'm happy with the pre-flight. I think it's safe to fly. We'll check in again in a minute.